Duodongo shared the eastern part of the Sunbalwa island with the Bimanis, a much larger group who speak the same language and share much history with the Duodongo, but who were fervent followers of Islam. The climate of the region is characterized by sharply differentiated wet and dry season. In the wet season, it rains nearly every day. In the dry season, the island is a desert. Since both Bimanis and the Duodongo depend on rain for their crops, the timing of the wet season's arrival is so crucial. In 1982, the normal time for the arrival of the rains passed without a drop. As the rainless days stretched on, people both in the Dongo highlands and in the Bima lowlands became more and more anxious, especially since many of them were subsistence farmers who would literally starve if the rains failed together. The differing responses of the two groups to this crisis are both fascinating and instructive. The Muslim lowlanders declared a day of fasting and prayer in assembling in the Grand Mosque in the center of Bima town to beseech Allah to give him rain. In the Dongo highlands, however, a group of respected village elders who were leaders of the community and ritual specialists went out into the bush to a particular mountain spring. There they cleaned the accumulated debris from around the mouth of the spring and made an offering of the rice wine, betel, tobacco, and a chicken sacrifice at the spot, all of which were intended to propitiate mischievous spirits who were stopping up the normal flow of water and the coming of the rains. In the event, a few days after both these efforts, the rainy season arrived and crops were, if in anything, more plentiful than usual. This story can tell us a good deal about the nature of religion. Let's begin by characterizing exactly how the two responses to this crisis differ. For the Muslims, the annual rains were, like all good things, a gift from Allah, the single and all-powerful High God. Human beings are dependent on God's goodwill, who in turn may depend on the behavior. Allah is by definition wholly otherworldly, formless, and antecedent to all existence on earth. For the Duodongo, on the other hand, the rains are a part of the natural order, and if this order is left unperturbed, they come in due course and are sufficient to allow human beings to pursue their lives in peace and plenty. The mischievous spirits who interfere with this natural process have their origin in human birth. They are formed from the placenta discarded in the bush after a woman has given birth to a child. They are, as the Duodongo say, the part of us that did not become human, and they are envious of us because of this. This is why they sometimes act so mischievously and why they can be placated with the things any human would want. A bit of food and drink, a chew, a betel, and a cigarette. The spirits are, in short, parochial, numerous, and despite their origins in many ways quite human. The comparison becomes even more interesting when we note that until recently the Bimanis had a semi-feudal society in which a sultan, at least in theory, owned all the land and in effect all the people in it. An ordinary person depended on the sultan or his aristocratic subordinates for the very means of production for his livelihood. The relationship between the ruler and the ruled was very much characterized as a relationship between father and his children, a metaphor not coincidentally also applied to the relationship between God and humans. The Sultan, moreover, was no ordinary human but royalty, and quite unlike common folk from whom he differs by nature and by birth. Duodongo society, in contrast, has always been an egalitarian one, relationships among neighbors being compared to relations among siblings. Subsistence depends on the cultivation of land communally. owned by the village as a whole, not by a single sovereign. King and neighbors are both help and trouble in one's life. So, although the connection is not explicitly made, religion and society are both models of each other and models for each other. These parallels between cosmological propositions and social arrangements have suggested a complex interplay between religion and society. Anthropological approaches to religion, in contrast to those that focus on theology or the philosophical positions of religious thinkers, have intended to be concerned with the everyday practice of religion and how it connects to the rest of social life. Early in the 20th century, Emile Durkheim suggested that it was in religion that one finds basic social categorizations, and that it was through cosmology that people represented the society to themselves, thus indicating that there was a causal connection between society and religion. A crude way of putting this idea is that religious rituals are instances of society worshipping itself, while at the same time creating intense personal communal experiences that confirm social solidarity. Other scholars, taking a less deterministic approach, have emphasized the way religion mobilizes groups and individuals to get through crises and other difficult events. In rites of passage, for example, the problematic transition of individuals from one kind of social identity to another is effected through what are often the most elaborate rituals practiced in a society. Arnold van Gennep, a student of European folklore, suggested we think of society as a large house with many rooms, each room symbolizing a different social status. Rites of passage move people from one room to another, allowing them to shed an old status and acquire a new one. In the course of this transition, ceremonies are held which are designed to remove individuals from the old status and bestow among them the insignia of the new one, often employing metaphors of death and rebirth to describe the process. While on the threshold, individuals have a special status. Not one thing or another. This status is usually marked by wearing of special clothing, alterations of physical appearance, the suffering of austerities, and the like. All societies have some ritual means for helping people through transitions in life. Sometimes these are called life crisis rituals, which may or may not invoke the sacred. We are familiar with religious rituals that move us from being unborn to childhood, as in the christening, from children to adults, as in the Jewish bar mitzvah, or from unmarried to married, as in weddings, or from living to dead, as in funerals. Secular rites of passage are also familiar to us, as in graduations or in inaugurations. Let us begin with a story that shows you not only how anthropologists work, but what is distinctive about anthropology as a discipline. This is a story about Peter's fieldwork with the Duodongo and how he came to be interested in the anthropology of law. One night I was sitting in the house of a friend in Doronitika, the village where I was conducting fieldwork. One of my friend's relatives burst into the room, shouting that his sister-in-law, a woman named Ina Mone, had been assaulted by a young man, La Ninde. We pushed over to Ina Mone's house to see what had happened. Ina Mone sat on the floor of the room, one side of her face painted with a medicinal paste, where she said La Ninde had struck her. She also showed us the shirt she had been wearing and that had been torn in the assault. Her male relatives were angry and talked of taking down the spears